This is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel at Viacom, bringing you a program that's devoted to painting and drawing, particularly the local scene and local people. Today, this is part 2 of a program which I have entitled Painting the Smithtown Bull. Some people have been doing that for years, but not in my way. I'm doing a portrait of the Smithtown Bull, a rather remarkable piece of outdoor sculpture that was done at the turn of the century by a man called C.C. Rumsey, whom I believe is a British sculptor, and it was founded by a man called Mr. H. Rovard. It's a remarkable piece and available to everybody to paint or draw or just to stand and observe. It's at the crossroads of 25A and Meadow Road, just on the western side of the town of Smithtown. So now that we've identified where this fellow lives, let me tell you about what I did the last time and tell you how the environment of this particular piece is equally as important as the piece itself. I have placed the piece in the center of the canvas because it is the portrait of the monument. Compositionally, one doesn't usually center things in this manner, but this one I felt was necessary to center it because of its importance in the composition of a picture of a specific object at a specific place. It is set in such a way that the sun is on it for the afternoon in this manner. This was done in the afternoon. This tape that I'm working from, this is a rather innovative thing that we're doing here. We have a tape that was set up, as you can see the cars are going by, so it's not a still photograph. And the afternoon sun is what you're seeing here on this monument. I drew it first in a rather extensive manner because it requires a tremendous detail and it has to be instantly recognizable for what it is. So I'm going to begin by painting it now that I have prepared the background. And I'm going to be using, let me find it please. I'm going to be using a square cut red sable brush, rather small, because I have to deal with the details of this. Now, because it's a piece that turns green with time, oxidization, I suppose, is the term. You pay attention to that, even though you know that the piece is not as pale as that, except that in the air, when the sun hits it, it is pale. The thing that I've done is to prepare the background to receive the lighter part of this sculpture. The back is light struck, and you can almost exaggerate the quality of light, and by making it even brighter. That is the business of painting, when you interpret and you pick and choose and exaggerate certain parts to your own liking. Even though you're working from life, you can in fact take liberties in order to make your point clearer. I talked about before about the opportunity to do animal anatomy drawings from a piece such as this because, well, it's difficult to do anatomy drawings of animals, especially when we don't live in a farm area, and secondly, animals move. So this is a wonderful practice piece for people who want to be able to in fact draw animals. From here it would probably be just another step towards a different shape, but for the most part it would be in fact the next step would be horses, which I find an awful lot of people interested in drawing horses. The quality of the green on this statue is kind of an iridescent well, it's almost a fake green because I believe it's happened chemically. The oxidization has taken place and has turned it into a rather peculiar bluish green. The monitor which I am looking at has thrown the entire face of this creature in deep shadow, and my drawing tells me, that I did when I was there, tells me that there are visible parts of the head that are not in such deep shadow. So there's one of the problems of working with a camera lens, that shadows tend to become very dense and deep and flat. There's very little opportunity to see any form inside a dark shadow. But when you're drawing it, you can change that by changing your focus and maybe sometimes even your position. So here we have the sun striking certain areas of this statue and giving you the anatomical information that you need from the shadows. For instance, the curve of this front leg is highly illuminated by the sun and shows you the joint in the knee and the way it bulges out into the lower part of the foot. And that is done by the intense sun and the remarkable quality of this particular piece. I understand from, well, it may be rumor, that this used to stand outside the Brooklyn Museum in New York, in Brooklyn, and that some ladies got together and decided that they didn't want to see this bull standing outside the museum, and the bull was in need of a home. And I hear that Smithtown, in a year that I don't recall, agreed to accept the bull because of its legend about Bull Smith, and to give it this particular home. It's been in Smithtown, I think, for well more than 75 years. Maybe that's just about the amount of time that it's been here. So all of these things have interesting stories to tell, and we are at liberty to see this piece that has now been moved, to our knowledge, at least once, and possibly with some investigation you'll find that it's been moved before. The shadow of this, see, I've got to make this very light under here because the tape tells me that all of this is in very intense shadow. And that's why preparing the background the way I did, and pointing out in the last episode, as it were, that I had to pay attention to the lightness. I'm afraid there are some reflections being cast whereby it's going to be difficult for you to see the details here. But let me put all the darkness in first, and then add the light details later. These are intense shadows because it's brilliant sunshine. And if I hadn't drawn this really properly beforehand, I would be totally lost by now as to where to put these darks and lights. So having assumed that the people who are watching this do have some knowledge of drawing, must understand that to do something as complex and as need to be as accurate as this is, that some rather extensive drawing would have to be done before you attempt to paint it. But I like to think that you're seeing a technique which might be useful to potential artists who might be intimidated by the complexity of this particular work. You reduce it down to some comprehensible forms, and you also work with a very accurate and detailed drawing of the form itself. As you can see, let me show you once again the drawing that I did from the site with the shadows drawn in to give you the rib forms and the general shoulder and the way the horn, which is sticking forward, casts the shadow of the ear here. This is a very quick sketch, but it is invaluable in the final rendering of this particular piece. So drawing and painting is the reason that I call this program Drawing and Painting is for this reason, that they're closely allied one to the other. Now, shadows, even though they're intense, do vary in tone. And this one, I'm using some ultramarine and some orange for the middle tone of green, which I hope isn't lost in the subtlety of this color thing. No, there it is. We can tell that the shadow on the body here is not as dark and as totally impenetrable as the others are, because the body does not recede as quickly as the head does here. So the whole lower part of this body is a tone, a middle tone of the green, of the dark green of the shadow before and the pale green of the shadow where the sun is hitting. You'll see that to blend is vital, because a blend is what gives you the realism, which is what I'm always after in my paintings. I'm spending a good deal of time on this form because that's the main focal point of this particular painting, is the portrait of the bull, and it really can't be faked. It has to be as accurate as possible, and also with as much detail as possible, just for the sake of avoiding the viewers of this particular piece later saying, what is that? And they may live across the street. So that's what that's the great horror that painters experience when they have either finished doing something like this and they say, and somebody says, what's that? Or you do a portrait of somebody and the question comes out to your horror, who is that? That's something that one avoids at all costs, and so accuracy has got to be attempted as closely as possible. I think that if you can reduce the shadows down to a simple form, you will find that the painting will be more dramatic and far more interesting than if you try to peer deeply into the shadows and get what I would call unnecessary details. Let me see. His wonderful chest here is a little bit subdued, but nevertheless quite visible against the darkness of this darker chest area. And the lower part of his foot is catching the sun. Right down here, a phenomenon which couldn't happen unless you were there to see it. But that certainly gives you the idea that the sun is really hitting it with great intensity and is giving you the, let me see, he's got some shadow on his forefoot here, showing you the fact that he's got a hoof that is divided in half. And the shadow is going to give you that information with just a very simple brush stroke. And here's the other half of the hoof. Well, I'm not an animal, I did not ever study animals, but I just know what I see. And that's what I try to convey when I do these lessons, that people must learn to see. Well, this fellow is standing on a very handsome, but in my opinion, large, almost oversized pedestal. And and it's made of cement. I wish it were stone, but I wasn't there when they decided to install this piece. Had they been, I would have had them put him on a piece of natural stone, which is what I did up at St. Charles Hospital when I supervised the installation of St. Charles's statue outside the hospital. I put him on a great big Long Island boulder, and it's quite handsome. But anyway, we're not going to complain about that too much. There he is standing on this. This part is still part of the statue. This is bronze, but the lower part, as you'll see when I start to paint it, is made of cement. Unfortunate, but nevertheless there. So as I'm told very often by friends and family alike, don't complain. It doesn't get you anywhere. This part is in shadow, hence has got a lot. It's a darker part of the foundation for this, and the signature on this piece is around the side in the back there. If you go around to the other side of the bull, you will be able to find the signature of the sculptor and the founder is, his signature is written right here. His name is here, Mr. H. Rovard. His name is recorded there. So, if you will bear with me for just a little bit longer, don't go away. I'll be back. We're going to take a very short break. After a short break, during which time I simply blocked in the color of the pedestal of this statue, and I'm going to be winding up the final episode of painting the Smithtown Bull. As you can see, it went rather quickly because I did my homework. I do not think that anybody ought to be under the impression that I was able to do all of this comprehensive painting here without preparation. It is not possible. Hence, I'd like you to know that there is no magic trickery here. It was simply done a little bit beforehand, just like Julia Child does when she prepares a meal and pulls something out of the oven that's already cooked after having prepared it before. She does it in multiple stages. I'm working here now with the sunshine. Oh my God! I walked right into the brown, so we'll just eliminate that. It's a good thing to make mistakes so that people can see how you correct them. When you blob a bunch of color on that doesn't belong there, you fix it. And I also need to re-squeeze some more white on my palette because one does run out of color, especially white. Well, I'm going to use the sunlight on this particular afternoon's grassy area here as making it even brighter than what it is, because that's the role of the painter, to enhance when you're doing it in order to make the point. Working from life is essential, and also pointing up certain areas of life is another part that the artist can play. Here is the treatment of the shadow of the tree in the background, and this very dark area back here is totally lost in the blackness of the intense sunlight in the afternoon. This area of bushes here, which may not be too visible on the model, this is my painting, visible on the monitor, the top of this bush arrangement has caught the light, and the lower part of this tree is in intense and very dark shadow. I'm using some Van Dyke brown and some of the sap green to make this really dark, because we're now way down at the bottom of the tree, in which the shadows become really deep and without form. The darkness here is going to allow me to put the top part of another sunstruck bush, which can be done with just very interpretive strokes. And the lower part of the bush is also an interpretation. And when you get a nice close-up like that, you can see just how interpretive it is. This bush is in front of the other one. And then the one in the foreground has a little bit more blue in it for reasons that I'm not going to really question too much. So I'm using some ultramarine blue and some cadmium orange and a great deal of white to give you the lightness of the top of this bush, which is which has a different tone. I'm sure it's the same bush, but according to my sketch, it has a different tone. The lower part of the bush is also extremely dark. And I'm going to jump away from this for a second because we don't have that much time. I want to show you how to handle the indentation in the pedestal that shows you where the legend is. Over here in the shadow side of this monument, you will see that there is a little lip that comes out over here. That's sunstruck. And then the identification of this statue is the sun is hitting this part of the little plaque. It's an indented plaque, and then there is a dark area which is the shadow side of the plaque. And I do believe that this lip up here is casting a very small shadow, which gives you another three-dimensional quality. And whatever lettering is in here is not viewable from the distance that I was in, so you simply indicate it with little shadowy things showing indentations of letters. There's a little bit, there is another band of shadow underneath this white one here. All very small details, but essential for the final understanding of what you're doing. The side of this monument here is maybe just a little bit dark against the green, which is one of the wonderful things about working from life, well, it's actually light. So I'm going to lighten that up, make it not too light. I'm going to lighten this up and let it fall where it may. If it's subtle against the grass, that's good. But fortunately, this monument is throwing a very sharp late afternoon shadow on the grass, and that's not to be forgotten because that'll tell you that it is anchored to this planet, that this great big monument is not floating in air, it is casting its shadow. And there's the shadow. So I suppose the only thing that is left here is doing the foreground, which is to be done and to be dismissed with great simplicity. I'll change the brush and get a larger one, finish the darkness of this bush here, and let a little bit of that monument peek through with a few little visible places that the bushes has not totally obliterated the monument. I think that you'll understand that that's what I was talking about, the trees. Leave the spaces that are open to view so that it doesn't look like a bunch of cutouts. Well, here's the rest of this very dark bush. And then, wiping my brush off, a few nice details could be done over here. In a very interpretive manner, a few darker trunks of trees must be put over here. Nothing too dark because they're far away and they're barely visible, but they are nevertheless there. This pale gray area must not left be unexplained. And so back here we have more growth, and just the trunks are telling that particular story. And then if we had a little bit more time, I would be able to bring down some of these tree branches that are overlapping the background and showing you that these are very old trees with a lot of branches that this is hardly finished. However, time won't allow it. As we sign off, I'll continue to work on this area up here, which has wonderful branches sticking up and going way off out of the picture, and doing nice dramatic kind of curves and turns and all sorts of nice dead branches, giving you the anatomy and the history of this tree. So with the foreground being put in a very pale, sunny tone, this composition, which of course has been done in a rather quick amount of time, is an introduction to how to handle the business of going out and painting, documenting or painting a landscape painting with a particular subject in mind, namely the portrait of something as identifiable as a statue. I hope that during this session the information I gave you will be of some use to people who are thinking of going out and either doing one of two things, either painting or drawing and or both, because both are vital in this kind of an experience. Well, I hope that in the past 2 sessions of the painting of this local landmark, the Smithtown Bull, I hope it's been helpful to you. Remember, work from life. If you haven't been able to catch everything I've been talking about, send for my small book, which is called Working from Life, at the Cable Easel, Box 1014 in Suffolk, New York. $5 will bring you this book, which is essentially all that I've been talking to you about for this series. In the meantime, my advice is keep your brushes clean, work from life, be observant, and have fun painting and drawing. Bye-bye. This is Patricia Windrow at the Cable Easel.